Summing up what we've heard over the last 2 years, I think we'll draw that to a conclusion. Edward Mountain, your questions, please.
Thank you very much, Convener. And I'll just also remind members that I'm a Director on the Fisheries Management Scotland. Can I just say that I welcome the committee's interest in mortality, and it actually reflects exactly what was undertaken by the REC Committee in 2018. And I could draw the Cabinet Secretary's attention to Recommendation 10, which relates to this, where it talks about having ambitious targets and world-leading to reduce mortality in Scotland. It goes on to say at the end it should consider appropriate mechanisms to allow the limiting or closing down of production until causes of problems relating to mortality are addressed. Mortality at that stage was 3.8 million fish, 7%. Increased to 22, which is in 22, to what the Cabinet Secretary suggested of about 17 million, which is about 25%. Increased again the next year to a higher figure of 7.5 million. Dropped a bit in 2004 and shot up again in 2005. So we've got mortality somewhere around 20 to 25%. What is the figure that the government will put on an acceptable level of percentages of the fish stock dying in pens of Scotland?
Again, I think this is a question that we touched on when I previously appeared in front of the committee, because, and I would just reiterate the response that I'd made then, it's about us driving down mortality to the lowest possible levels. Are any of these levels acceptable? No. I want to see them driven down to the absolute lowest they can be. And again, that's what the work that we've taken forward, trying to identify if there are persistent issues and how best to address them, has been about.
Well, what we're seeing is the figures are remaining stubbornly high, well above the numbers that the REC Committee considered to be totally unacceptable. I mean, if you translated that to other stock across Scotland, that's, 6.5 million sheep in Scotland. If 1.5 million were found dead on the hills across Scotland every year, would the government find that acceptable, or would they take action against it?
We're not comparing like with like when we're talking about these scenarios. It's about driving down mortality to the lowest possible levels. And again, that's where the focus of our work has been. And that's ultimately what it's about. Trying to identify if there are persistent issues that we need to try and address. But there is significant investment and work that's ongoing to try and get ahead of problems where they can exist and to try and drive that down.
So my final question, Convener, if I may, is that I want to propose to you that if the figure got to 10% and there were pens across Scotland where 10% was being exceeded in every single production cycle, and I can point you to a few, Cabinet Secretary, I'm going to resist the temptation to do that. Do you think that would be a figure that would be acceptable, or do you see it should be lower? And if it is 10%, will you say to them, as the REC Committee suggested and as this committee has suggested, that production should stop?
Sorry, you mean 10%? What would that be an acceptable level of
mortality?
Mortality? Again, we haven't set a threshold, and we're not looking at establishing those thresholds, because there are so many different causes that can lead to mortality events. And for me, the key focus is how are we addressing that? Is action being taken to prevent that from happening? And on the back of these events, is action being taken as a result to ensure it doesn't happen again? And that's where the focus of the work is, and what we're trying to drive forward and make sure that we're driving them to the lowest possible levels.
With respect, Cabinet Secretary, if 25% of my cows died every year, I'd be out of business, and I wouldn't want to continue because I'd be sickened by it, and I'll probably just leave it at that.